I've been doing a lot of reading. Been getting into this writer by the name of Matthew Dix. He does some very good tips on storytelling. And essentially, I tried to include that in one of my videos, and that didn't work out too great. So I had to pull it down, rework it, put it back up, and that was doing good. So hopefully, you guys can go check that out. It is a list of underrated movies that I think you will like. So go check that out. It's my most recent video. Today, we are actually going to be taking a look at the Fallout cast, talking about the game and some hidden gems. Hidden eggs, Easter eggs that were laid throughout the series. I finally got around to watching the entirety of season 1. It's a phenomenal show, and I recommend you all go check it out if you haven't seen it as well. Also, I think it was one of the creators or maybe one of the producers. I would feel like it would be like one of the creators or one of the game devs who actually came out and said that the show is canon to New Vegas. So everything that happened in the show everything that happened in the show takes place right after the events of New Vegas. So if you've ever played New Vegas, all of this stuff is what happens after that. And what's actually interesting is I was watching a recap video, and it's something that, maybe I was doing something else that I actually missed, was that at the end of the show, you actually see New Vegas. So that means season 2, we're actually going to see New Vegas. But then also, one thing that I kind of predicted that would happen unintentionally is that the ghoul would end up being a good guy in some sorts and helping our main character to find her father. Well, she ended up finding him, so now they have to find him again. So, yeah, but let's get started and check out this video of the cast talking about some of these Easter eggs and the game. Oh, wait a minute. Let me put my headphones in because you will definitely be getting an echo, and, we don't want that. So hopefully you guys have had a great week or 2 weeks. It's definitely been 2 weeks since the last stream. All right. So I'll be working on some things for these streams, but we will get there eventually. Oh, definitely didn't want to bring. Wait, did that come up? It didn't come up on the screen. Great. Okay. All right. And
Can you tell me what's happened in the last 200 years?
Holy you're an actual vault dweller.
I am. I thought all you dipshits were dead.
I'm gonna do a spin on if you had to live in a vault, because I'm sure you've been asked that question a couple times. If the two of you, real you, had to be a vault dweller, I want to know what your greatest asset is, how you'd contribute to the community. And I want to know your greatest weakness, the thing that would just make you a plain old stinky member of the vault.
What would make you a good member of the vault? You, Ella.
What would so many things,
Ella, actually, maybe it's easier to compliment the other person.
I feel like it might be better.
Ella is an advocate for everyone else, and that's the way she is on a set. It's one of the most beautiful things about her. But she takes care of everyone, and she really wants to be,
that's a good attribute
for people. So she would be a great leader.
This is the nicest thing.
Yeah, like she'd be somebody who'd be like, I'm not gonna say what I was gonna say. I was gonna say she'd be somebody who's easy to get on your side, really manipulate, is what I was gonna say. But I think the skill that I'd probably bring would be cooking. I'd cook, do some of the farming. You know what I mean? I got a pretty much a decent green thumb there. What else? What other skill? Maybe some tech stuff. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. They might leave me outside. I'm not gonna lie.
He's ever said to me.
I don't say a lot of nice things there.
I have to love hard for that compliment. That's very sweet. Thank you.
She would do good.
Oh gosh, now I gotta think of a really good one about you. This is why I should but
it better be
Aaron's just so
really
tough.
Good.
He's so tough.
That's
and
right.
Cool.
That's right.
Oh god, the pressure's really on.
Hey, I would be ready for the Raiders.
No, I think
a fighter.
Aaron,
yeah, I'm a good fighter.
So many things I can't choose. I think you would really contribute to the morality, the moral happiness, the culture, music, wine, conversation. Aaron brings people together, and it's always, it's always when you least expect it, and it's always like a conversation around a fire pit with a good glass of wine and good music and a good movie. He's always got the best like recommendations and references, and he's really about community. So I think that's how you would contribute.
That's very nice. I like that.
Yeah, you match that. I'm not letting you
Did I
two off the
match
hook. I'm not letting you two off the hook with the negative side. Now I'll let you answer for yourself.
Yeah, I was
so-
gonna say, I don't know. I don't know about that. Negative thing. I get real hangry.
Ooh.
So if you experienced that yesterday.
Ooh.
I was about to fight someone. I was so hungry. So if we were to run out of food, if that was about to be one of those situations, I would be a nightmare to.
What would a negative be? Because at one point I would have said that me being a bit selfish would be the negative, but that's something I really work on. Hold on. Why is this? It doesn't want to cooperate. Being pulled down. Oh, duh. It was on a bump. Okay. All right. So what I was saying is one thing that I think would have been a negative for me in terms of being inside of the vault is probably that at one point in life I was selfish. The best story I could tell is that it was a date night. I was sitting on the edge of the couch with my date, her sister, and her sister's boyfriend. And essentially they passed me the remote because when you're watching Netflix, you spend way more time searching for something to watch than actually watching. So they passed me the remote because I got great taste, and I just saw a flick and I was like, oh snap, this is something I haven't seen in mad long, and I just picked it. Yo, tell me why everybody got up and walked out. Like that was legit embarrassing, because like they legit was just like just scoffs and everybody just left, and I was like, damn, you know what I mean? And I'm just sitting there watching this movie that I think is great, and then it hit me like, bro, you didn't consider what anyone else would want to watch, what any other genres other people would watch. I just picked the sci-fi. So if I was to be in the back in the day, I would say it was selfish. Today, I'm not 100% certain. I would need a little bit more time to figure that out.
To live with, I'd be unhappy. What about you?
I think I'm like really, I would get depressed, I think, living in a vault. Like, let's be real. No sunlight.
Yeah.
Real
No
sunlight.
sunlight.
For sure. I would get depressed as well.
Maybe we're taking vitamin D, but like still, I think I would get depressed. There'd be a closet somewhere that never gets cleaned in my place. You know what I mean? It would just be like, oh, what's the point?
You'll be in that closet. You'll be sitting in that dark
solace,
closet, alone, cross-legged.
Ella, for you to tap into Lucy. Actually, I'll use a similar kind of phrasing, but I might complicate this because I think it's a more interesting question to answer from her perspective. When she steps out into the wasteland, what do you think she thinks her greatest strength is and also fears her greatest weaknesses?
Ooh, you got good questions. I think she definitely thinks her greatest strength is her morality, her commitment to the golden rule. What does she think her biggest weakness
What does she
is?
fear? Because she also walks out with confidence that
So
everything
much
in the vault is the authority.
Absolutely. And I think she believes that everybody believes that.
But yeah.
And she doesn't even necessarily know that there is any life on.
What happened? Oh, I didn't know when you click and hold it fast forwards. I had no idea YouTube had that feature. Okay, I just learned something new. Anyway, but I'll go back a step real quick. But what I was gonna say is that was a pivotal moment for her in the series, was finding out that actually there are people already out here and they've been living out here, and you guys, and you can see wheels turning in her head like, wait a minute, we are supposed to come out and restart civilization. And it's like, no, that was that was the corporations actually trying to restart civilization in their own way. So like you know how there's already this whole conspiracy theory in IRL in the real world about the new world order. So that was kind of the way of doing the new world order. So like if you think about like what happened with like COVID or something where everybody was locked into their houses, um, there's conspiracy theory around that about that being a test run on control um, and what's the word I'm looking for? Control and not necessarily authority, but the being able to convince people that what's best for them is to essentially stay in your house and not go outside and not interact with people. And it's a bit scary. I don't know how all these conspiracy theories, whether or not they're real or not. I mean, I don't know what you guys think about all the different conspiracy theories about the new world order, but I feel like there is some um it's true on some levels, especially when you think about the World
Absolutely.
Bank and
And
stuff
I
like
think
that.
she believes that everybody believes that, And she doesn't even necessarily know that there is any life on the wasteland. And then she holds herself with such pride. Everyone's going to listen to me because I'm a vault dweller.
You were trained for this.
And she just has no idea. I think she might be afraid that her biggest weakness is actually with Lucy. I think it would be not knowing, and I
Yeah,
think
the
her biggest
ignorance.
fear kind of becomes realized. I think her biggest fear is everyone knowing something that she doesn't know, not being prepared. Because vault dwellers love to be prepared, especially Lucy.
Oh, sorry to pause it again so fast, but this reminds me, I was just listening to Joe Rogan and he had, I don't recall the guest, but she was actually born into a cult. And one of the things, I'm seeing some similarities between what she was doing and what happened in the cult. And what she was saying was that once she left the cult, and she left at about 17, she really didn't know how to interact with people. And that was kind of the scariest part, that everyone kind of just knew these things that, as far as interpersonal skills, that she just wasn't aware of, because growing up in a cult, everybody that's around you, they're already your friends, they're already your family, you know. But to come out into the world and now you have to meet new people, there's a naivety there, and it's scary. And I would assume it's the same thing as, coming out of the vault is almost like she just left the cult, but then you can see towards the end how happy she is to get back to the vault, to get back to what she's actually accustomed to. And that is also something she spoke about, that there are people who, when they leave the cult, end up committing suicide, because they don't know how to live without that structure, even though it's so controlling and um so I guess another an antonym for, or well, not antonym, a synonym for controlling, another synonym for controlling. But uh without that structure, they just don't know how to live their lives. They have to go back into the cult, and they don't want to, so they end up taking their own life. It's very sad.
Well, that makes all the sense in the world.
Right.
I want to jump from there to tapping into the tone of the show, because I've watched 4 episodes now. There are so many instances where your balance of comedy and just respecting the dire nature of this situation is pitch perfect. Is there a particular scene where you found that balance most difficult to hit?
Actually, yes. The scene where she tries to disarm the ghoul, she tries to get the ghoul to stand down when he's terrorizing this town. This is a perfect example of her truly believing she's doing the right thing and believing everybody knows, everyone will respect the Vault Dweller, and everyone agrees with what she agrees with. And that was hard because we tried so many different versions. We tried funny versions of that, and then they ended up choosing a more serious version, which I really liked, because it seemed like she was just kind of reciting something out of the Vault Tech handbook, like some corporate lingo that she's really ingested.
Yeah, a funny version wouldn't have
difficult
worked.
to balance the naivety, the privilege that is exposed in that moment.
Naivety,
And it's better
see?
to not play it funny, because the comedy comes from everyone's reaction. She plays it completely straight, and everyone else is like, well, this guy, and it worked great. But I was worried about that speech.
Is carrying the Squire bag as difficult and nearly impossible as
It's
it
the
looks?
worst thing in the world.
Yeah, that
It's
looked
the worst.
crazy.
It's the worst. It's the worst. Whoever made it, every day on set, I would be like, who made this? Who made this? I couldn't wait to be done with the Squire bag. But also, I was the first person to pick it up and be on my spot ready to go. It was part of what the job is. And I would just run everywhere with it. There's a part...
But I mean, I don't see why they would actually make it as heavy as it looked on the show. I mean, of course, that would take extra acting, but I mean, I would think maybe 15 pounds, 20 pounds at the most. Like, you wouldn't really want to make it as it's depicted, which in the show, it looks like it's at least like 50 pounds because they're like, looks like an arduous task. They're like, trying to carry that thing, you know, that wouldn't make sense for me that they would actually make it that heavy.
Part of the military aspect of like, this is your training, you know, this is what you do. It was as big as me, you know what I mean?
Huge.
I feel like I look like that, like running through an airport now. I just picture myself being at that.
Like the first day of high school.
Yes, exactly.
That's the
When
size
you
of the
Yeah,
bag.
you got all your books. Yeah.
My worst fear in the airport is I look like I'm about to go camping on the flight.
You take so many punches in the first couple of episodes,
Yeah,
especially.
you get ass
What are some
whooped.
tips and tricks you
Yeah.
picked up that you would suggest to somebody else who has to take a believable amount of extreme punches?
Some tips and tricks. Warm up. Warm up. Warm that neck up. You're not gonna be able to walk
Warm that
the
neck
next day if
up.
you don't warm up properly. Really, because it's one thing to do it really great one or two times. I have a real love for working with other stunt performers. I feel like I can trust them to make a little bit of contact with me, not hurt me, and if it looks real and feels real to us, it'll be real going into the camera. But oh my goodness, I woke up literally bent in half one day.
It's like a little whiplash, isn't there?
It totally is.
I have to touch on the power suit, obviously, which is
Wait,
just like
I would
incredible
feel
looking.
like the best people to learn that stuff from would be pro wrestlers, because they're hitting each other, but not really. I think pro wrestling probably does some of the best fake fights, you know, and you know, they're actually cutting themselves. They're actually hitting each other, but not hard enough to where in every scene they'll like burst a lip or something. It happens, but you know, I think pro wrestlers would be someone great to look towards, of course.
Detail is exceptional. What is your absolute favorite part about acting in the power suit? But then I want
Power
to know
suit
the
is
most
fire.
difficult thing about acting with that.
My favorite is actually the raised visor. Is my favorite piece of it. One, because I can't control it myself. I love the collaboration.
It's very Iron
That's
Man-ish.
why I'm in it. We have a team member from Legacy who's on the sidelines with, you know, the remote control to it. And often it's just a sense of real pleasure to the cue coming too early or the cue coming too late. Or I remember my first scene with Ella ever. We were laying in the rubble after diving through a wall, and I ended up saying something like, close visor. Because we had finished the scene and I was waiting for it to start to close before I could get up. And then that leads me into the worst thing about it is the heaviness. You know,
Yeah, I would imagine.
exist mostly in the top half of the suit, and I stand on boxes and things to make it a eye line for Ella, and that is 50 to 60 pounds.
Sheesh.
You first put it on, you think this is super fun, cool. My arms are dragging on the ground like a gorilla almost. But, you know, 10 minutes later, you're like, did we get the shot? Can I take this off?
There's a quote from you in our press notes where you talk about some of Lucy's headspace at the end of the season and the questions that it raises for her future. At the very end of season 1, what do you think her greatest strength is? And what do you think her greatest weakness is?
Oh, again with the questions. I do think at the end of the season, for better or for worse, she is proud that she made it this far. And she...
I just wanted to point something out. Sorry again. If you notice, they're like consoling themselves. Like she does it when he's talking, and from my understanding, that's it's a bit of nervousness. So I don't know how comfortable they are with this interviewer. I wonder if they got a chance to speak to each other and warm up beforehand. because it definitely feels a bit. The interview feels a bit rigid. They're being nice, and everybody's kind of like working together, but it definitely feels like they're waiting for like a difficult question that they can't answer.
Maybe can't believe that she survived, regardless of how. Greatest weakness? I don't know if she feels 100% good about the choices that she's made. You'll have to watch it and tell me what you think. I would think maybe it's an insecurity that she has maybe changed a little too much. I don't know. I'm not spoiling anymore.
Look out at this wasteland. Looks like chaos.
If you, as in real you, had to be a vault dweller, I
Yes.
want to know, what would your greatest asset be? The
Okay.
best way you would contribute to that community. But then
Okay.
I also want your greatest weakness, the thing that would just
dear.
make you a plain old stinky member of that community.
Oh dear, I'm a very positive, upbeat person, so I think in that way I'm very similar to Hank, the character that I play in Fallout. So I would say I would lead with that. My weakness would be I'm somewhat claustrophobic. So I don't know how long I would actually be able to stay in the vault.
would have a
So
problem.
yeah, it would be a challenge.
If you had to pick one member of the Fallout ensemble to be your right hand if you were the overseer of your
Yeah,
vault,
yeah.
who would you pick and why?
Oh,
I'll pick
gosh,
the
I gotta go with
ghoul.
Ella, the woman who plays my daughter. She's
No,
so
I
capable.
want the ghoul.
I go with her. And she's fun. She's got a great sense of humor.
Bugging.
So you have your fair share of experience making exceptional TV that builds massive fan bases. I know every show is different, every story is different, but
What
do
else
you
is
notice
here?
any shared qualities in those kinds of shows? Like something that signals to you, it will have that special spark that will catch on.
It's a funny thing because it starts with writing. Of course, I always say quality of writing, which we have great quality of writing on this show and the other shows that you mentioned. And it comes down to this weird thing of chemistry. It's an alchemical reaction. There's just no way to know. You just have to put these people together and you hope that the right spark
work,
happens.
yeah,
And I
there's
think in some of the
chemistry.
things I've been in Twin Peaks, of course, for example, Sex and the City.
Oh, that's a dope
Housewives,
bag.
They
I
were
want
already
that.
existing when I joined them, you know what I mean? So they knew what that chemistry was. But it really is an important part of the equation.
Of all
Oh,
the
was he
actors you've
Mr.
ever-
Big on Sex in the City? Is that who Mr. Big is? Because that's the only thing that's like clicking. Like, I'd never really watched Sex in the City. Like, I know back in the day, my mom would watch shit like that. And then, as I got older, I know some women would watch. And then they would, like, the movie came out years later once I was an adult. And, women I knew would go see it. And I feel like, I think he was Mr. Big.
worked with,
Yeah.
can you name someone who has a similar process to your own where like the second you met, you're like, we're immediately in sync? But then I also want the opposite, someone with a completely different approach to
Right.
the work who challenged you to adapt and try something new and for the better.
Okay, I had the joy of working with Marcia Cross on Desperate Housewives. She's Juilliard grad, so we went to similar schools. So we had similar education, similar kind of process. So she's very serious, right? She's a great actress. She's really into the role. The minute you stop the camera, she's having fun and telling a joke. And I'm exactly the same way. Work very hard, very diligent, very focused, and then the minute we're out of it and we're back jibber-jabbering about something else. I love that about Marcia. Someone who's the opposite of me, who would be someone who's very serious? Someone who's very serious. It wouldn't be Dennis Hopper. Dennis Hopper just scared me in Blue Velvet. And he was also fun afterwards. I mean, I did this thing years ago with Anthony Hopkins. That was pretty amazing. And we had a long walk and talk. But he was also similar to me. We'd finish the scene and we'd start doing impersonations. He does an amazing Clark Gable. And so we would sit and just do impersonations together. No, I think everybody I worked with has been
Who's
like...
your best impersonation?
My best impersonation? I do a pretty decent walk-in. I think everyone does.
Yeah, Christopher
One of my
Walken.
favorites.
It's one of your favorites. Let me see if I can. Oh no, Perry, we're here talking. Coffee, maybe. I don't know. It's okay.
It was all right.
On the
That was
spot.
all right.
I'm
That was
better
all
if it's.
right.
I'm better if it just
That
comes
was
out.
all right.
I'll take it. At the beginning of Fallout, what do you think Hank's greatest strength is as an overseer of a vault, but also what's his greatest weakness?
He's very capable. Hank is. So when things go off a little bit, he immediately springs into action and knows exactly what to do. He's a great leader. I think he sometimes overreaches. So there's times when he really thinks he can handle something and take care of something, but he's in over his head.
Do you think he has any inkling whatsoever that something bad could happen in the vault, or does he truly believe that they will all live out their days in 33?
I think he's surprised. I think that's the thing when it happens. I think he knows what's happening. Something is happening, but it's more than he realizes. There's a history there, but there's a relationship there that surprises him, that he did not expect. And it opens up a whole world to him, which we just hint at in the very beginning, which we get to, obviously, down the road.
I'm always a big nerd for character backstory. I'm not sure if this is the kind of thing you do, but is there
I'm interested
anything
to
you
see
came
more of his
up with
storyline.
in terms of Hank's past that we don't necessarily see or hear about directly in the show, but we can feel informing your performance?
Oh, absolutely. And it's actually in the script. There are some flashback stuff. We go back to a place and time. We don't know exactly when this place and time exists. We go back to this place and time and we see sort of an earlier version of Hank. And this informs a lot of who he is in the current day.
Another thing I was dying to ask you about is your collaboration with Ella and Moises, because I feel like a lot of this comes from a script, but when you're playing family in a show like this, I feel like you can gain so much from the other actors who are playing your family members.
Well,
so
you depend on them.
yeah, is there anything we can see in Hank that you think came from that collaboration?
I think with Moises in particular, I mean, we just have a few moments together, but you can see that he's the son, that Hank is, he loves his family. But there are certain things about his son that really bug him. And you can see that in just a few of the exchanges that we have. So the challenge of this was to create a relationship that the audience could understand, kind of a shorthand that I had with both Ella and Moises, just in brief little vignettes, but that enough that you get it and you understand kind of what the expectations are. And I think we accomplished it. It's
But you see, and I think the reason that happens with the character dynamics between Hank and his daughter and Hank and the son is that she complies more, then that is part of the naivety that she feels when she goes out into the world versus his son. He's questioning everything. He's inquisitive. He's like, why are you doing that? That doesn't make sense. And it's something that we spoke about in the last stream, which is that initially you feel like he's going to be a problem and he's going to be annoying, but he's the one who's really uncovering the dirt. He's the one who's like, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. Let me look into that. And I think he's going to be a pivotal character, and I actually want to see what happens to him in that vault. Like how long he's going to be actually in there, and if it's going to take someone else to come and let him out. Like I want to see what happens with that.
It's tough.
This
I mean,
show features
not the vault, in the chamber, because he goes inside of one of those the cryo chambers.
there's some pretty incredible sets. Is there anything in particular you saw on the Fallout set that made you go like, I can't believe this is what it takes to make it look like that on screen?
Yeah. I mean, it was reminiscent of, you remember the first Alien? And you went on that ship. To that point, all spaceships, all spacecraft were pristine and beautiful and shiny.
And clean.
Suddenly, we're in an environment that's completely the opposite of that. This is a working ship full of rust and dings and all this, and this is what we have in our world. They took these giant, and this is practical, by the way. This actually worked, this giant door. They sand it, they make it look rusty, they make it look real. It's all believable. So you feel like you're in this environment that's been around for hundreds of years, still works, but has gotten the patina. And they work really hard to get that. And I said, this is some detail that is kind of out of this world.
The detail on these sets is also incredible.
But you see, most of the stuff is practical, and that's what really makes the show so feel so well done. The power suit is practical. We just heard the guy talk about it, down to 60 pounds. He's saying the door is practical. The ghoul's face is practical makeup. It's not CGI. Like, that is really what makes a show good, or even a movie. That's what really makes sci-fi good, when you have enough of a budget to do practical stuff. So when you think about a show like The Last of Us, And one of the main complaints about The Last of Us is that we don't see a lot of the zombies, the monsters, whatever you want to call them, in that show. Uh, and the reason is because it's CGI. A lot, all for the most part, I think all of it is CGI, and there clearly wasn't enough of a budget to do that episode after episode. So they had to make the antagonists not really those monsters, but human beings. Even though in the game is kind of a bit of a blend, I think everybody wanted more monsters in The Last of Us, and uh, and because they use CGI and less practical means, that's what happened. I think had they used more human beings and put them in suits and makeup and stuff, it might have been comparable in terms of expense wise, but I think it would have been it would have looked better. I mean, like, not the what is it, the bloater, the big one that explodes, like, in the main scene when he's climbing out. Like, I think, like, if, like, maybe that would have had to be CGI because of the size, but I think all the other ones could have been practical.
Anything that you noticed and appreciated in the vault set that might be small, maybe people won't notice it, but you hope people pick up on it maybe on a second watch?
One thing that we had, the Pip Boys that we used. It wasn't part of the set, but it was part of the props and stuff. The detail on those and the way they work.
Again, something else is
were pretty
practical.
impressive, I thought that was pretty cool.
How was it adapting to operating with that on your arm where it came across as normal and natural?
Yeah, it took a little bit of getting used to, because
Yeah,
it had a
big-ass
weight,
watch.
and a value, and that you had to be careful that you didn't sort of, bang someone in the face with it. But I came to love it because, when you operate an iPhone or something, your hands, you can't do anything with your hands, or you do one hand like this. This, you have both hands free. You're just doing like this, and you can still hold your coffee cup in this hand. See, I could be doing my Pip Boy like this, and I'd be like, okay, and now I can have a sip of coffee. See, don't have to put it down.
If that's the wave of the future, I'll take that versus them like being implanted in our brains or something.
Right.
I'm sold.
That's the alternative.
People are going to come after you.
Ain't much stays clean up here, Rawteur.
First question for you is, you recently mentioned that you thought we were in a golden age of video game adaptation. So it was making me wonder, what was it about the pilot script for this show that signaled to you it was a series that was going to contribute to that?
It was so well written. It was compelling. I read a lot of scripts, like every other actor in this business, or producer, or writer for that matter. The first, I read 2. And I couldn't wait for the next one. I couldn't wait to get my hands on the next one. They were
That's
all
when
very compelling for a variety of reasons. There is a reason why people are going to this now, because these worlds have been fleshed out. These worlds don't need even more fleshing out. They're so good. I have watched my son play games for a few years now, and I see the way that he consumes this entertainment. And for him, it's about the story in between moments of action that keeps him coming back to these games. And there's something.
Yes and no. Fallout is an RPG, and if he's speaking in terms of RPGs specifically, and even MMOs, which is like a level above that, an MMO RPG, to me, it's more not necessarily the story in between the moments of action. It's more about living another life that's other than your own, and getting to experience, because nobody gets to do that. You only have your life, and that's what video games allow you to do. So people consume media, consume content. So, like, whether you're a book reader or a movie watcher or a TV show viewer, you get sucked into those stories because you get to be a part of someone else's experience, which is why reality show is so popular right now. Reality television, but video games are so popular because you actually get to be in control of what's happening. You see, so like when it comes to RPGs, it's even more controlled than a typical story game because you're building the character, you're determining how strong the character is, whether or not they're more intelligent, whether or not, specifically Fallout, whether they have great lock picking skills, whether they're good at more technical computer stuff, and I feel like that is the real draw to video games, specifically um, in RPG, but even a game like a sports game. So if you take like any of the 2Ks, you're building your character. Like you'd love to see the progress and the growth in a character. And I feel like that is what's lacking in a typical adventure game. In a typical adventure game, it's just the story. You're not actually building the character. So I think like that's why RPGs just have more of a hold on me anyway.
Different every single time he plays. That's a gold mine. I mean, it's an inexhaustible gold mine for adaptations of these games. And that's very exciting. We all need new stories. And I don't know that that's infinite, right? But we seem to keep making them, and our burn rate has been reduced because not as much content is going to be made, going forward. So we'll see. This is a good resource for them.
Oh, absolutely. And I hope the content we do get going.
He's dead. That was definitely a nod to AI. That was 1000% like the AI is coming
forward is of this quality, and I mean it sincerely.
Oh, so and of course, just because of finances, you see Netflix is canceling a lot of shows. It's typically just Netflix I'm seeing that's killing shows. They just said that The Witcher is going to end, which, I mean, I stopped watching after season 2. But people aren't liking what's being produced right now. There isn't enough of a empathetic attraction or sympathetic attraction to any of these characters. There's nothing there for a lot of them. So, and that's one thing that I say often, that if I'm watching the show, you need to make me care about this character. Like, forget about the story, forget about the zombies or whatever it is, even if it's, sci-fi or whatever. I need to connect with this character. And if I'm not connecting with this character, I'm not going to keep watching. And that keep me coming back episode after episode. But then, of course, there's the underlying storyline that needs to be well written as well. But most importantly, it is an empathetic character who is developing, who's going to start one way and end the other way. Just like the main character in Fallout, she started one way thinking that, okay, we're in this vault and we're going to come out and we're going to rebuild society. And when she ended, she realized, oh, it was all a facade. See, so it's a good beginning and end, and then the middle just kind of happens,
Could talk about special effects makeup all day long. So obviously I want to hear a little bit about the Ghoul makeup test process. What would you say is the biggest difference between how it looked when you did your first makeup test and what everyone's going to see in the finished product?
Great question. I'm going to say out of the gate, it was probably 70% there. It wasn't a radical departure. There were so many mock-ups on paper before we started, and the conversations kind of centered around these drawings, if I'm remembering correctly, but that's how I remember it. That at the end of the day, it really kind of came down to these conversations that we were having back and forth between Jonah. Obviously, his opinion matters more than anyone, but he invited me to really collaborate in the process, along with Vincent Van Dyke, who did the makeup, and my dear friend Jake Garber, who applied it. and Geneva and Graham. And what we came back to again and again is that we want the audience to lean into this experience. We don't want them to be grossed out by it. We want them to study his face. We want the goal to be handsome in a post-apocalyptic 200-year painful journey, as close to handsome as he could be, having those life experiences. And we want them to, at least protect the moment where, if it calls for sympathy or empathy for the journey that he's been on. All of those things were factors. And lastly, we wanted to construct a piece that allowed my face to still be my face, and to communicate with people through the expressions on my face. I don't really pay attention to that sort of thing, but to have something that moved as opposed to just some bland kind of piece of prosthetic that I wasn't able to evoke or to communicate emotion. All that was really very, very important, and all of it was thought through before we began the process.
Great success in that respect. It comes through big time.
I will say this really quickly. The first day, it was a very tough day because of the temperature outside. But the first few takes, as soon as Jonah called cut, I would look at him like, okay, where am I? What am I doing here? I can't exaggerate this to
can't do a
convey
lot.
how I'm feeling. I'm not that kind of person. It's happening inside of me. I know it's real for me. Are you feeling it? And he said, Walton, the best decision we made was not putting contacts in. It's your eyes. We see everything that you're thinking. And once I was assured of that, reassured of that, then the rest of it, was, I'd never thought about it again.
Highly effective choice right there. What about figuring out how he walks and talks? Is there any specific classic Western inspiration you had, or just any trial and error in terms of getting that to such a pitch perfect extent?
I watched a lot of film. A lot of these movies, you've seen them, I've seen them a dozen times, from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly to A Fistful of Dollars to A Few Dollars More. Once Upon a Time in the West, Henry Fonda, his performance in that was so stoic and so effortless and without a lot of movement. He really barely moved at all. If you combine that with what Paul Newman did in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, with this movement and this charisma and this ability to improv a conversation and to be loquacious when he needs to be and to disarm people, with stories, that was something else that I put in there. And then there was, Cooper Howard, and well, how do these two people kind of relate? And watching Alan Ladd and Shane, watching James Arness, I watched 40, 50 episodes of Gunsmoke, watching Burt Reynolds in those episodes of Gunsmoke. It was a lot. I did a lot. As far as the walk and everything else, those things are not premeditated to me. They're not choices that I consciously make. Do you know what I mean? I don't try on 4 or 5 different voices. I'm not that person.
But you see, even in that scene, you could see it really is the eyes, but it's more like, I feel like it was coming from here. So cheek down, you get some sort of inflect, at the mouth. Because, if you go and you purse your lips, that's disappointment, and then of course, the eyes, you definitely can see it there. He's doing his thing.
What I do is what I try to do anyway, is not control the flow of water, meaning that you put the makeup on, you look at it and you think about it, and it's just there. It's either there or it's not there. And I have never had an experience in my life where it hasn't been there. So to me, it's alchemy. It's this beautiful thing when you turn yourself over to an imaginary set of circumstances that this person will tell you exactly who they are, And it was a process of the prosthetic and then the outfit itself.
I have a million more questions for you. I'm not allowed. You got a busy day, so I will say.
Oh, come on. One more. Come on, one more. It'll be okay, y'all.
Give you one more.
One
Someone
more.
doesn't get mad
Yes,
at me.
one more. No
so
trouble.
I'm glad we can fit one more in, because we talked about the makeup effects. We talked about the physicality of the character.
Yeah.
I was also curious to hear a little bit about his headspace. Having lived for over 200 years, what would you say, I guess, the ghoul understands more about the world and how it operates that gives him an advantage over the other main characters we meet in the show?
Absolutely. Let's take this. What happens in the beginning of the first episode of the show, the first 7 minutes, that's how long it is, 7 minutes. I realized pretty early on that I was the one experiencing this catastrophic event for humanity. It's not through multiple perspectives, it's just through mine. And that's a big responsibility. Whenever you believe that, you're carrying a lot on your shoulders with having that experience. But it was a privilege, really.
It really does a good job of building his character, especially like when you see he's looking for when you find out that the real search is for his family. So like it's the if I go back, hold on, if I go back, like it's that disappointment, the anger, like you definitely do see it all in the eyes, and like I said, cheek down. This is the parts that move. Like you really do feel that sense of like, I'm gonna burn the world down more than it is to get what I want, which is my family.
With having that experience, but it was a privilege.
You could feel it, the empathy
to have that. And then what happens on day one? What happens that afternoon? What happens on day two? What happens a week later? What do you see? What is right in front of you? Where do you go? What do you eat? What do you? And so really thinking about that, I just thought about it for like 9 months, and the desperation and the pain that he witnessed over such a long period of time, and why the f is he still alive, man?
Yeah,
I mean, really,
that was my question.
Motivating him? And I've answered that for myself, and I think the show will answer that as it goes forward.
That's great.
Everyone wants to save the world. They just
like, I think that's also important, whether or not the producers gave it to him, that he has that in mind, that there are these things that he won't necessarily know about character that the actors have to know in order to give these little nuanced moments. So for example, this guy, I don't remember his name off the top, but like you don't really know a lot of his backstory outside of that one moment when he's coming out of the fridge, right? But like, so the director hasn't given him the story of, okay, what happened after that, from there to where you are now. It should be kind of up to him to work with them to create that backstory so that in every scene he has that in his mind, right? Because then that would lend to this character being realistic, and it'll definitely come through. It'll translate in ways that we don't even realize, but you'll pick it up. I promise you'll pick it up. So the fact that the guy who's playing the ghoul has that character's world built in his head already. Perfect.
disagree on how.
My first question for you comes from our press notes, because you joke that you didn't write movies for 2 years because of Fallout 3. I feel like some might look at that and be like, that's a distraction, but you never know what can influence you as an artist. So is there anything about those 2 years of playing Fallout that you think influenced you for the better as a film and television creator?
Yeah, there was a moment, the late 2000s were really, it's kind of an incredible thing to be in the generation in which we got to see video games from the very beginning. Like Chris and I had a Pong set when we were kids, in my grandmother's house in Florida. And so you go from Pong to Fallout, and every step in between to watch this art form really come into its own. I think in the late 2000s was the moment where, as often as not, in any given year, if someone asked me what movie or show did I like the most that year, as often as not, the answer for me would be a game. When you look at these experiences, Fallout 3 being a really pivotal one for me, but there are other ones out there. The storytelling, look, I love movies and television, but occasionally that storytelling can kind of get a little staid. Every art form kind of comes into a place where it gets a bit safe. And I think at various moments, films and TV have gotten a little safe, a little staid, a little establishment. And there was a moment in the late 2000s, and it's continued to some degree. Although, you know, within gaming, as the budgets of these games get bigger and bigger, there's the possibility that things get more conservative. But there was really a sense in gaming in that moment of kind of a live wire, a sense that, you know, you really didn't know with these sorts of games. And the experience of Fallout, I didn't know anything about the games before I played Fallout 3. I'd never experienced them, and I really didn't want to know anything. I'm the kind of person, I don't want to watch the trailer, I just want to watch the movie. Playing that game for the first time, it was more than anything else, the tone of it that I was struck by. It was so odd. It was dark, violent, funny, almost goofy in places. And I just had never experienced anything quite like it. And I definitely hadn't experienced anything like it in film or television. So when the possibility, sitting down with Todd Howard years later, the possibility to adapt it came up, we just, you know, we jumped.
Two-part question about adapting a game you love.
Yeah.
What aspect of Fallout were you most excited to bring to life on screen? But then can you also pinpoint something else that was like more creatively fulfilling than you ever could have imagined to bring to life at the start of this?
Oh, wow. Well, I think two things, the world and the tone. And those are such a big part of the Fallout experience with every game. The world, the environment, and in every game it's a different one, right? It's a different stop on the I would say the world tour. It's all North America, but every game is a different city, several of which I've lived in, and it's always fascinating to kind of explore what they look like after the fact. But it's not quite our world, and that's where the tone comes in. It's this bizarro America, this America that never has a moment of national self-reflection, never has a Vietnam, never has a Watergate, and continues on for another century in this kind of blustery Eisenhower mode of nuclear-powered toasters, and there's a certain amount of satire and social comment that goes into these games that I never quite experienced in that sort of rich mixture of futurism, but retrofuturism. And so the tone, I think, from the beginning, and this is why we wound up working with Geneva and Graham, our showrunners, bring to the table, you know, Geneva is like me, comes from the comic book world. And Graham comes from comedy. And it was bringing those two tones together that I think was one of the most exciting, but also nerve-wracking parts of the adaptation.
I love seeing that successful combo just like jump off the screen in this show.
Thank you.
I always love highlighting one can adapt something that so many people love in different ways. So another two-parter, but
Sure.
first with that, can you pinpoint something from the games that you knew that was like, it was so important to adapt that faithfully just because of how important it was to the fan base?
I think with these things, you don't want to look down too much. You want to be guided by your own love. One of the amazing things about these games that is both exciting in terms of adaptation, but also frightening is the sheer openness of the games.
Yeah, the experience.
Your
You don't
experience
know
of playing the
what's
games
gonna
is
happen.
Very, very different.
Yeah.
Unlike a lot of games that are kind of more on rails, I think of some games as kind of movies with playable bits. And these are some terrific games, but it's a different mold of storytelling. In Fallout, the game experience, there's some commonalities there, but the game experience is really kind of in your hands, which faction you're going to join, whether you're going to be good, bad, or somewhere in between, all these sorts of questions. So we knew that we had to get more than anything else the tone right. But
you see, so that's what I was trying to explain when why don't I know this man's name? The person who plays the ghoul. Is it? Oh, Walton Goggins. When he was talking about the video games, so that's what I was saying. It's about the experience, about you being able to be a part of the story in a way that you can control, and that is what really attracts people to video games.
Then when it came to the props, when it came to the costumes, very lucky to work with our incredibly talented designer, Howard Cummings, and our incredibly talented crew who had, and this is one of the beauties of adaptation, when you're talking about a universe that's been explored by the fans so to such an extent, but then also dragged into reality by those fans at different conventions or gatherings. You have a little bit of a head start in terms of figuring out how you're going to make these things and how you're going to bring them to life.
Is there any particular detail that's super important to you that you hope people catch in your show?
Oof. There's a lot of detail in there. I think more than anything else, it was a really kind of a delicious experience to have Todd Howard, with whom this whole escapade started. We sat down to have lunch. I'd long admired his work, and I guess vice versa, and walked away from that one lunch saying, okay, we're going to do this. Having Todd come to visit our sets here in New York and walking through, these have to be some of the most beautiful sets on any project I've ever worked on. And it was really the patina, the finish of them, and watching Todd kind of look at paint and the props, because one of the experiences of the games is you can pick up almost any object and look at it and examine it. You pick up a book on a table, as often as not, it's going to have words in it. It's going to have an account of someone's life from before the end of the world. And so watching Todd walk around our set and pick up books and look at details was a real thrill.
I know there's probably rules against this at this point in the process, but please tell me you kept something as a fan.
No comment.
I'll go back to the other half of my question about adapting something with such a big fan base. Can you give me like the opposite example of that? Something where you had to change it in order for that element from the game to suit the television medium?
Fantastic. Yeah, no, absolutely. Great question. And I think for us, the biggest challenge was, okay, if games are, and I think in the early days of adaptation, any adaptation, but with video games in particular, people got stuck on the grammar, right? They think, okay, what makes a video game a video game? And they would, as often as not, you'd see these movies where they sort of shot in the first person, which doesn't work for movies. And by the way, not all games are first person. So you'd get stuck on the grammar. For us, we had the advantage of seeing how that didn't work necessarily, and that was fairly straightforward. Where we had a challenge was the moral ambiguity of the games, right? The ways in which you have these branching choices in every interaction you have with every, with every non-player character, with every other character you're interacting with. You get to be virtuous. You get to be an asshole. You get to be somewhere in between. And of course, with an adaptation, with a live action, you don't get to make those choices. And so Geneva and Graham's decision to make this an ensemble show, really, we talked a lot about The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
It was a good
great
choice.
Westerns and the great TV series in which you're coming at it from three different points of view. So you have Ella's character, Aaron's character, and Walton's character, and they all represent different stations along that moral.
That's actually a really good, as a viewer, you understand that, but to hear him spell it out, I haven't heard anyone who has done a breakdown of the show spell it out like that, and that poignant. That's a very poignant aspect of this show, because as I was saying before, with RPGs, you're actually controlling not only the story, but the character and how the character is developing. So in a lot of RPGs, you might be trying to be the good guy and doing everything good. And, then you'll have some people who are doing it bad. So to have each character actually playing a different role, I love it. Now, of course, we know that the girl is going to be playing the good role. So then what would I think there's the blur between, let me see, what are these guys' names? I want to be accurate with the names. What is his name? Maximus, right. So I think there's a blur between whether or not Maximus or Cooper are playing like the good roles. I mean, not good roles, but like the bad role, because Maximus' character, you're a bit unsure about, because, in the beginning he's getting beat up. So you're like, oh, damn, like he's going to be a doormat for this show. But then you turn around and then you question whether or not he put the blade in his friend's boot. And then you see him let the the guy who originally had the power suit die. So it's just kind of like, okay, which path is he taking? Like, if, let's say he was playing the video game and he was like, you were watching him stream the game, you'd be like, which path are you taking, bro? And then I feel like Cooper is a little bit more clear, to where he starts out, you're not sure, but towards the end, you're kind of like, okay, like, yeah, he's definitely more on the good guy side. It's a little weird, because you don't know who's good or who's bad, because everybody's just doing what's best for themselves. So it's difficult to really say this person's good or this person's bad, because nobody's really just killing for the sake of killing, which you tend to do in RPG games like Fallout. Like sometimes you just, as he said, like you just want to be an asshole and you just kill somebody just for the sake of killing somebody. But I don't really see these characters doing that a lot. So there's kind of like a, I don't really know what's going on with those two, but Lucy for sure, she's too naive to be bad. She's kind of, as I said before, she was part of the Vault cult. So her mind is, I'm good, I'm here to save everyone type of thing.
Spectrum.
They do, but you also have little moments with each of them where you
Yeah.
see those wheels in their heads. So
Absolutely.
like, in particular, Ella has a couple of shots where it's like completely silent, but you can look in her eyes and she's weighing options there.
Yes,
I love it.
absolutely.
I wanted to touch on the journey of going from Westworld to this because there are some similarities. The adaptation element, the world building in both are exceptional. What are some lessons learned making 4 seasons of Westworld that we can see you applying in Fallout and, maybe even making the show even stronger for it?
The lessons from the beginning were work with the best cast and crew you can. And especially with a video game adaptation, all the more important. The premise with Westworld was why people pay all this money to come to this park, but it has to feel real. It has to feel more real than the real world. So any conversation about doing it with CG or doing it with green screen was right out the window. We had to pack a bag. Take away all these different things that you have in the game, the open world nature of it, and try to replace them. We weren't going to get away with replacing them with computer graphics. So once again, dragged out the old carry-on suitcase and dragged ourselves down in Namibia and out to Utah to make sure that we captured as much practical beauty as possible to give the audience that sense of immersion.
Oh, you feel it. I'll end with this one because it kind of leans into that idea. It's something Walton
Finding out
mentioned in
that
our
they shot
press
in
notes too.
Athens
He said that when he first read this script, he thought it was unfilmable. Can you give us an example of something in the script that people might think is unfilmable and explain how you actually pulled it off?
Just that first shot of Lucy coming out of the vault, which is such a big moment in the games. You've been in this kind of claustrophobic universe maybe for an hour or two, or if you're a bit of a gaming dunce like me, maybe 3 or 4 hours before you manage to find your way out. And you come out in this kind of vista not having any idea what the world is going to look like, especially the first time.
Yeah, she was afraid.
So we knew for that we would have to find some pretty special locations to make that work. We had seen pictures while we were working on Westworld of an abandoned diamond plant in Namibia, filled with sand. And it didn't work for Westworld because of the masonry construction, right? So the American West, you didn't have bricks, right? The bricks didn't show up for 100 years. So it never worked for us for Westworld. Any conversation, even the conversation about flying down to Namibia, we didn't even have to have that argument because it didn't look right for that show. Leaving my lunch with Todd, where we kind of had a handshake deal to figure this out, I said, okay, we don't have a cast yet, we don't have a story yet, but I know I've got one location. And we took ourselves down to Namibia, and I was unprepared, having looked at the pictures for all those years, daydreamed about it. We actually got down there, stood out, looking out over it. There was an early conversation about exactly where we wanted to set the game, because that's such a big part of, or set the series rather, such a big part of the question of the games is where each, the biggest question people ask me when they know that I know Todd is, where's the next game? Where's Fallout 5 going to be set? Standing there looking at Elizabeth Bay in the Skeleton Coast in Namibia and realizing, to our great good fortune, that in addition to looking incredible, when you look at that shot, there's a drone shot where Lucy has just walked out of the vault. 95% of what's in that shot is real. The only thing we really added is the abandoned Ferris wheel.
Ferris wheel, yeah, I was looking at that.
Incredible part of Namibia that looks almost exactly like
Santa Monica.
It's just one of those things. And we were shooting there the first day, and someone walked over to me and said, no one's ever shot here before, which is an unusual experience for a filmmaker.
If you insist on staying, then you will have to adapt.
First thing I wanted to ask you about was working with Jonah and Lisa as EPs. What is something they did for you that helped preserve the vision you had for the show, and maybe also helped you exceed
a lot louder? Like, that was crazy.
Work here.
Yeah, 100%. I've written a lot of shows.
Who's this, Todd Howard?
At various
Graham Wagner.
Budgets.
Oh, he's a writer.
All that stuff. This is definitely the biggest undertaking I've ever been a part of creatively. I don't think it would have been possible without them, without their support, without their advocacy and familiarity with shows of this size. This is our backdrop in Namibia that we went to. We had 3 crews running simultaneously filming. It was very much a culture of like, we definitely can do this, not a can't culture. That was amazing. on every level. A script is just a script. It's how you execute it that makes it what it is. We owe those guys the whole show.
You know, I actually
Many
like this part in the show. I just felt like it was pretty unrealistic.
Culture. That was amazing on every level.
This part right here, because it's like
Script is just a script.
there's no way he didn't get shot. There's no way. Like that's what 30 feet at the most. I didn't like this scene at all. Like, what's the point of this if it can't even hit a target 30 feet? I didn't like this part right here. Because from there all the way around the corner, like, nah, ain't no way. There's no way. There is no way. It's a machine gun.
Script. It's how you execute it that makes it what it is. We owe those guys the whole show.
Oh, I have many follow-ups to that. First, because you're very experienced when it comes to TV, but your past TV work is extremely different.
Yeah. I'm very experienced in guys walking into a room, sitting, and then leaving the room. Like that, I'm good at that. No one can top me on that front.
You're devaluing it a little. It's very high quality, and you see that bleeding through in this show too, which I think makes it something different.
Well, it's a great, when you are trying to save money, you can always have two people go in a room, talk. I mean, theater worked like that for a few hundred years. It works, but you want a little more sometimes when you're doing a show about the apocalypse.
Just a little
We
bit.
got to do that. That was really, to me, very exciting.
Of all your past shows, which experience did you find coming in handy most making Fallout?
I was only on the last season of The Office, which felt like, I was saying earlier, arriving to the final days of the Vietnam War, where they're pushing the helicopters into the ocean, and you're sort of like, what the heck? It was a lot. In terms of like the overwhelmingness of it all, I remember I was on set there. I needed to get a page printed, and someone, PA ran out, bought a printer, printed the page, and then
returned it.
Threw the printer out. It was like that kind of an energy of like, throw everything at it. That was the closest.
Threw the printer out?
To this, I suppose. That was The Office.
That PA kept that printer.
I think it was.
I bet money on that. I would have kept that shit. Are you kidding me? Throwing a printer in the garbage.
And it was very fun. But that kind of prepares you for almost anything.
All right, now a two-parter
Wasting
about
money,
the big
bro.
and small of it all, because
Kidding me?
again, first big epic world-building show for you. What is something?
Well, I would call Baskets a epic world-building
Okay,
show.
I'll take that. What is something you saw done on this set that made you go, I can't believe this is what it takes to make it look like that on screen?
But there was a moment, the power armor, I did always expect to be CG, and Jonah was like,
Yeah, practical was a good choice.
For real.
Yeah,
I was like, okay,
that was a great
like,
choice.
I'm a bit of a cynic. Low-budget TV feeds your cynic a little bit. And then voila, we had a real power armor on set. Not only that, when it came time for the power armor to fly, as shown in a clip that we see it landing, that was a blend of CG and a real guy in a jetpack flying. You've seen the videos of those guys. We had one of those guys wearing half a power armor suit to get the light reflections just right. Yeah, that's a bit of a surreal moment where you're like, it's happening, and you're kind of
That's
like, what have
cool.
I gotten myself into? Everyone's fine though. Everyone, no one got hurt. That's the most amazing thing. That actually really is an amazing thing that people did not get hurt making this show.
Stunt teams need more credit than they get.
Absolutely.
Always, literally
Yes.
always.
Our stunt teams were incredible. We'd have crazy ass, and we also would like to try this other thing, and you're like, let's do it. They're amazing. Every department was so just the greatest. So many great people.
To flip that idea around a little, is there any low budget TV making technique you've used that you were able to apply to Fallout, where it wasn't about necessarily going big and with lots of cool techniques and technology, but
Yeah.
a low budget format actually served the material well?
Yeah, there was a moment in episode 7, which I can't necessarily talk about, but that was we had this whole thing planned and the sun was going down. And yeah, there's moments where the bag of tricks from comedy can be useful, where instead of having people be awesome, why not have them be dumb? And that is charming too in its own way. And we have a few moments like that peppered throughout the show for sure.
Take that. I have something to look forward to.
Yeah,
Now I'm going to be
yeah.
looking out for that
Okay,
in
yeah.
episode 7. I love hearing about how things can evolve along the way.
Yeah.
So of all the characters you have in this show, who do you think changed most from draft 1 to what everyone will see in the finished season?
Chet, strangely enough. Chet was Vault Dweller number 3 at some point, and then suddenly Vault Dweller number 3 needed needed a name, and Vault Dweller number 3 became oddly one of our favorite characters.
Okay, yeah.
Just
Chet's a
because
good character.
what Dave Register brought to it and how he kind of embodies the world of Fallout, a guy with Brill Cream and the post-apocalyptic America. Something about him just feels like the full spirit of Vault-Tec and Fallout.
That's so incredible, especially because of what a big presence he has in the
Yeah,
first 4
you know
episodes.
what I mean?
I'm very impressed.
But it's just like it's what you water. Give Vault Dweller number 3 a few more lines, and suddenly he's a person. And then you cast that person and you talk to them, and they're really quite funny. And then you just keep. I think about like some of our favorite characters from Cheers, like Paul over on the side was just a guy who had a line once in an episode and eventually became like a cult favorite.
Great example. I'll use that same question to tackle the different areas you create, the different worlds within the world of Fallout. Of all of the designs there, what changed the most from how you originally envisioned it to what you were able to accomplish when you actually went to film it?
I mean, the town of Philly truly was such a massive build that we wanted to go back there so badly. We found again a spoiler. We do go back to Philly.
I told you.
I know it's. I'm not even twisting my arm, and I'm like, oh, here.
No, but I mean, like
the finale goes like this,
But yeah, I mean, I would expect them to, because in the video game, you tend to go back to certain towns because you'll get a quest, you'll go, you do whatever, and then you come back. So I mean, like, it would make sense that they come back. But what I also do like is that they are kind of crossing the different worlds of the different game. Because as I said, like at the end of the series, it appears as if they're on their way to New Vegas, which should be fun. Yo, New Vegas is going to be crazy. I'm looking forward to seeing that. That's going to look so amazing.
Beautiful, highly detailed set
It's
too.
yeah, and it's just sitting there next to our production office any day that we weren't using it. I was like, can we just shoot some YouTube videos?
Right.
It's very, very cool.
Curious if you'll answer this question now. Did you keep anything from set?
No, I'm not a big guy who collects things from set. I think otherwise your home just becomes this museum of work.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I'm not a hoarder in that regard.
Okay, that's what the fans are for, though.
Really?
They hoard things for you.
Yeah.
They're doing a Mass Effect series? I didn't realize that. Is it already in production? That's interesting.
I think if I were to do it, my home would be a mess. It is a mess, but it's my mess at least.
I'm living proof that does happen if you start collecting things.
It's flawless, yeah.
I imagine when you pitch a show like this, you pitch a full series arc. So are there any lessons learned from making season 1 that you think will impact the series arc you created from the start?
This is my first time, I think, doing 8 episodes, and
I don't believe so, but film rights were purchased about 2 years
and
ago.
10
Okay.
is significant.
Yeah.
Because there's always
That should be
a
interesting to
with the
see.
10 episode order. There's always a what you call filler, but sometimes filler is your favorite. Yeah, this show really moves, but maybe it wants to.
Listen, there was almost no filler. You know what? I'm happy he brought that up, because there was almost no filler in this show. Every episode was good. There was no like whack, corny flashback episode that was just like, oh, why am I seeing this right now? It's not even. Every episode in this show hit. You see, and that's what I was saying about The Last of Us. Instead of just doing 6 episodes, because as you see, he's talking about a 10, instead of doing like a 10 episode series with filler, they just did 8. I feel like that's what he's about to say. The Last of Us, if I'm not mistaken, was 8 episodes with 2 filler flashbacks. Like, why? You know what I mean? Like, those stories that were in those 2 fillers could have been put into one of the other episodes. Like, they didn't need to have it was, oh my, that annoyed me. That really annoyed me that they did that. This and X-Men 97 really eating me up. Really, you know what? I started watching X-Men 97 and I just kept falling in and out because I was like watching it while in bed, so I have to watch it again. Um uh I think I got up to the part, like before I fell asleep and woke up. So like I know it's like at different points. Like I fell asleep almost right at the beginning when they were shooting like the ray guns at them, and they lost their powers, and then like Storm lost her power and she left, and she left a note for everybody saying that she was leaving. And then I woke up and there was another Jean Grey at the door. And she was mad because she had the baby with what's his name, with Scott's his name, right? And he was kind of like, I don't know if you're the real one. And then Beast was like, actually you're the clone. And she was tight. She was like, how are you gonna say I'm the clone? I've been through this and this with you. I was like, oh, this is crazy. Like, so I definitely gotta go back and watch. I was like, oh man, I gotta go back and watch. I was like, yo, I gotta go back and watch. For real, bro. It is definitely not a kid show. That scene alone right there, I was like, oh, wait a minute. There's some like real interpersonal drama going on right here. I gotta go back. I gotta go back for sure. For sure.
No lessons learned.
Okay.
How about that?
I'll take that. I feel like you're on guard now.
I'm just realizing I'm incapable of learning.
Episode 2, okay, yeah.
That's not true, because I think we do see the influence of all your
by
past
episode
projects,
5,
and
okay,
I quite appreciate
okay.
that. Is there anything from the Fallout games that you are very eager to bring to life on screen that we don't see in season 1 that you're keeping in your back pocket for the future?
There's 90% of the world of Fallout is we weren't able to access, in this 8 episodes. It's like, if you're a completionist, you can play Fallout for like 1,000+ hours. It's a single game, and there's multiple games.
Right.
So there's so much. I hope that fans are patient, because we could have tried to just get it all in, and it would have been chaos.
It would have been rushed.
Remember this, remember this, remember this.
Yeah.
No story.
Yeah.
Hopefully by the time we get to some of the other beloved pieces of the Fallout world.
I like that it's not actually
In an effort to push.
following the any particular game. It's just in the world. So like, as I've said multiple times in this video, from what I believe it might have been him who said that the story that we're seeing in this show takes place after the events of New Vegas. So it's in the world, but it's just not actually following any of the particular games in terms of storyline. So I like that. It gives them more room to do their own thing, as he said, and it's not going to be jumping all over the place trying to be reminiscent. So that's something that The Last of Us is going to have to contend with, because I actually wonder if the next season of The Last of Us is going to still be the first game, or if they're going to try to hop on to the second one. Because then if they do that, then it's going to they're not going to have any more material for season 3. I'd prefer for most game adapted films and TV shows to share a world and not a repeat of yeah, exactly, because then you kind of already know where it's going. Like I want a new story, a new experience, because when you play the games are essentially movies that we control as gamers. So I already saw that movie, I already saw that TV show, I created it. I don't need you to now come and create it. Like, definitely give me a new experience. I agree 100% with that.
But not spoil anything. Is there any tiny detail within the games that really appeals to you and is important to you, even if it's something small that you want to see on screen?
Just the sort of 90s attitude towards capitalism, which I feel like is coming back in a cool way, and that we're kind of questioning these things. I think it was seen as Gen X being bratty and punk, but I'm like, yeah, why not? Like, what else are we doing? Yeah, it's that kind of stuff.
Okay, I'll take that.
The spirit of the original games, and that has been in all of them.
W video. Let's see. Get rid of this. Okay, so in here, like I hated when Joel and Ellie. Wait, I hated that we got Joel and Ellie's story. Let's see what's happening with another group in like NYC. Yeah, that actually would have been very interesting as well. And it's one thing that the Nolan. It wasn't Chris. Which Nolan was that? Jonathan. That Jonathan Nolan was saying they made the decision in this, which was a good decision, to make it an ensemble cast. So even if in The Last of Us they would have made it an ensemble cast, that would have been um, great, and that would have probably helped more towards what you're talking about, because then you would have got to experience what other people were going through instead of just seeing their experience. So yeah. Well, yep. All righty then. Well, I think that's gonna be a wrap for me for today for this stream. I will see you guys again next week Sunday. Thanks for coming through, Vaughn. Thanks, for everybody who hopped in for a little bit. If you have not checked out the YouTube, please do so. Please do so. I am trying to do one video per week. My current video is 11 overlooked sci-fi movies you've never seen. So if you're looking for something that you've never seen before, you're looking for some cool sci-fi comedies you want to check out, please go check out my latest video. And that's it. Yeah, thanks for coming through. Appreciate it. PAX Day is dropping soon. My friend was just telling me he got a invite to the alpha. I'm not sure if I'll be getting an invite to the alpha. But I might start streaming some games again at some point. I don't know when. I'm really just focused on making this YouTube content for right now anyway. But anyway, appreciate you all for stopping through. Thanks, Vonnie, for coming through again. And I will see you guys next week, Sunday, 2 p.m. Western Standard, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Peace.